If you think you know what true evil looks like, you're about to be proven wrong. Smash that subscribe button, leave a comment below, and buckle up, because this story will haunt you long after it ends. The rain hammered against the cobblestone streets of Lyon on the night of March 14th, 2019. It was the kind of cold, relentless downpour that kept most people indoors, curtains drawn, oblivious to the horror unfolding just blocks away. But Capitaine Marc Devereux of the Police Nationale wasn't most people. He had received a call at 11:47 p.m. that would set in motion one of France's most disturbing criminal investigations in decades. The address was an abandoned textile factory in the Guillotière district, a neighborhood that had seen better days. The building had been empty for years, its windows shattered, its walls covered in graffiti and the grime of forgotten industry. But tonight, it had become a crime scene. When Devereux arrived, the area was already cordoned off with yellow tape. Blue lights from patrol cars sliced through the darkness, reflecting off puddles that had formed in the cracked pavement. Officers stood in clusters, their faces pale, their usual banter replaced by an uncomfortable silence. Whatever they had found inside, it was bad. Capitaine, Lieutenant Sophie Arnaud approached him, her breath visible in the cold air. She was one of his best investigators, sharp and unshakable. But tonight, her hands trembled slightly as she held her notebook. "You need to see this. Nothing could have prepared us." They entered through a side door, the metal groaning on rusted hinges. The smell hit Devereux first. Death has a scent that once experienced is never forgotten. It's sweet and metallic, mixed with something else, something that turns the stomach. He pulled his collar over his nose and followed Arnaud deeper into the building. The factory floor stretched out before them, a vast space of shadows and decay. Their flashlight beams cut through the darkness, illuminating old machinery, piles of rotting fabric, and then, in the far corner, something that made Devereux's blood run cold. 3 bodies. All male. All positioned in a way that was clearly deliberate. They sat in chairs arranged in a perfect triangle, their hands bound behind them, their heads slumped forward. But it was what surrounded them that stopped Devereux in his tracks. On the floor, written in what appeared to be blood, was a single word: justice. "Who are they?" Devereux asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "We've identified 2 of them so far," Arnaud replied, consulting her notes. "Laurent Dubois, 43, a defense attorney, and Michel Fontaine, 51, a retired judge. The 3rd victim, we're still working on identification, but based on documents found in his jacket, we believe he's connected to the legal system as well." Devereux's mind raced. 3 men, all tied to the justice system, murdered and arranged like some twisted jury. This wasn't random. This was personal. This was a message. The forensics team moved carefully around the scene, photographing every angle, collecting every piece of evidence. Devereux watched them work, his years of experience telling him that this case would be different. The precision, the symbolism, the choice of victims, it all pointed to someone who understood the system intimately. Someone who had been wronged by it. Over the next 72 hours, the investigation consumed Devereux's team. They worked around the clock, tracing the victim's last known movements, interviewing colleagues, family members, and anyone who might have seen something. The media had gotten wind of the murders, and the story was spreading like wildfire. 3 pillars of the legal community, slaughtered in an abandoned factory. The public wanted answers. The government wanted results. But the more they dug, the stranger the case became. All 3 victims had one thing in common beyond their professions. 10 years ago, they had all been involved in the same trial. A high-profile murder case that had gripped the nation. A young woman named Elise Moreau had been found dead in her apartment, and her boyfriend, Thomas Beaumont, had been accused of her murder. The trial had been brutal. The prosecution, led by Michel Fontaine, had painted Beaumont as a violent, jealous lover who had strangled Elise in a fit of rage. The defense, led by Laurent Dubois, had fought hard, but the evidence seemed overwhelming. And the judge, presiding over it all, had been none other than the 3rd victim, whose identity they had finally confirmed as Henri Leclerc. Thomas Beaumont had been convicted and sentenced to life without parole. He was sent to the Centre Pénitentiaire de Poissy, one of France's most secure prisons, where he had remained for the past decade. Devereux felt a chill run down his spine. Could Beaumont be orchestrating these murders from behind bars?
But how?
And why now, after 10 years? The team pulled Beaumont's prison records. He had been a model prisoner, quiet, keeping to himself. No disciplinary issues. No suspicious contacts. But then Arnaud found something. 3 weeks ago, Beaumont had received a visitor. A woman who had signed in using a fake name and address. The prison security footage showed her clearly. A woman in her 30s with dark hair and intense eyes, but facial recognition came back with nothing. She was a ghost. Devereux stared at the grainy image on the screen, his instincts screaming that they were missing something crucial. Who was this woman? What had she told Beaumont during that visit? And then, just as they thought they were getting somewhere, another call came in. A fourth body had been discovered. This time, in a Parisian apartment. Another person connected to the Beaumont trial. But when they opened the apartment door and saw what waited inside, when they realized who the victim was and what had been left behind, everything they thought they knew about this case shattered into 1,000 pieces. Because the woman lying dead on the floor, with the same word, justice, written on the wall behind her, was someone they never expected. Devereux ended the call and stared at Beaumont. Where would Amélie go? If she's running, where would she hide? I don't know, Beaumont said, but his eyes told a different story. He knew something. He was protecting someone. As guards came to escort Beaumont back to his cell, he turned one last time. Capitaine, if you find Amélie before they do, you need to protect her. She's not the monster here. She's trying to expose one. And that monster has been hiding in plain sight for 10 years, protected by the very system that's supposed to deliver justice. Devereux left the prison with more questions than answers. His team was waiting, ready to hunt down Amélie Moreau. But as he drove back toward Paris, a terrible thought occurred to him.
What if Beaumont was right?
What if they were chasing the wrong person? His phone rang again. Arnaud's voice was breathless. We found her. Amélie Moreau. She's at the Père Lachaise cemetery. Units are moving in now. Devereux's heart pounded. Tell them not to engage. I'm on my way. Nobody moves until I get there. But as he raced through the Paris streets, sirens wailing, he had no way of knowing that when he arrived at that cemetery, what he would discover would force him to question everything he'd ever believed about justice, truth, and the very case that started it all. Because Amélie Moreau wasn't running. She was waiting. And she had brought proof that would burn the entire French legal system to the ground. Devereux's blood turned to ice. Get me a helicopter.
Now.
He looked at Amélie. Come with me. We're going to Poissy. We're going to save Thomas. And then you're going to tell me exactly who's behind this. They raced back to the cemetery entrance, Amélie clutching her laptop, Devereux on his phone coordinating a full lockdown of the prison. But as they reached the gates, Arnaud's face was pale. Capitaine, Beaumont's dead. They're calling it suicide. He hung himself with a bedsheet. No, Amélie screamed. No, no, no. But Devereux was staring at his phone, at a message that had just come through on a secure line. A message from an unknown number. It contained a single sentence and a photo. The photo was of him and Amélie in the cemetery, taken from a distance. A sniper's view. The message read, drop the investigation, destroy the evidence, or she's next. You have 1 hour to decide, Capitaine. Choose wisely. Devereux looked at Amélie, then at Arnaud, then at the dozen officers surrounding them. Anyone could be compromised. Anyone could be working for the architect.
Who is it? He demanded.
Amélie, who's the mastermind? She turned to him, her eyes wide with terror and certainty. It's Claude Pelletier, the Minister of Justice. He's been overseeing the entire judicial system for 12 years. Every appointment, every case review, every policy decision. He's been untouchable. The name hit Devereux like a physical blow. Pelletier was one of the most powerful men in France, a respected figure who had built his career on being tough on crime. If Amélie was right, the corruption went straight to the top. His phone buzzed again. 30 minutes left. Devereux made his decision. He looked at Arnaud. Sophie, I need you to trust me. Take Amélie into protective custody. Don't book her. Don't process her. Just keep her hidden and safe. Use only people you trust absolutely. What are you going to do? What I should have done from the beginning. I'm going to get the truth out, no matter the cost. He took the laptop and folder from Amélie. You said 3 news organizations? She nodded. Le Monde, BBC, and the New York Times. Releases automatically at 9 a.m. unless I cancel it. Don't cancel it. Let it burn everything down. Over the next hour, Devereux worked faster than he ever had in his life. He made copies of copies, distributed evidence to trusted contacts, ensured that even if something happened to him, the truth would come out. He recorded a video statement explaining everything, uploaded it to multiple servers. At 8:47 p.m., 13 minutes before his deadline expired, he received a call from an unknown number. Capitaine Devereux. The voice was smooth, cultured, unmistakable. Minister Claude Pelletier. I hear you've been quite busy this evening. It's over, Pelletier. Everything goes public in 13 hours. There's nothing you can do to stop it. Perhaps. But I can make you a hero or a pariah, Capitaine. I can have you arrested for obstruction, for fabricating evidence, for conspiracy with a known murder suspect. Your career, your reputation, everything you've built, gone in an instant. Or you can be the man who solved a terrible crime, who brought a dangerous vigilante to justice. Amélie Moreau killed those people, and you caught her. That's the story that saves everyone, including yourself. The story that's a complete lie. The story that preserves order. Chaos helps no one, Capitaine. Yes, mistakes were made. Yes, some people may have been overzealous in their pursuit of justice. But tearing down the entire system? Releasing dangerous criminals back onto the streets? Creating a crisis of confidence in French law? Is that really justice? Devereux closed his eyes. He thought about Thomas Beaumont, dead in his cell. About Elise Moreau, murdered for trying to do the right thing. About 18 innocent people still rotting in prison. You're right about one thing, Devereux said quietly. Chaos helps no one. Which is why the truth is the only way forward. See you at your trial, Minister. He hung up and waited. At 9 a.m. the next morning, the story broke worldwide. The evidence was irrefutable, overwhelming. Within hours, Minister Pelletier was arrested. Over the following weeks, 14 more officials were charged. The scandal rocked France to its core. 6 months later, Devereux stood outside Poissy as the first of the wrongfully convicted prisoners were released. The system was broken, yes, but it was finally being fixed. Thomas Beaumont would never walk out those gates, but his name had been cleared, and 17 others would get their lives back. Amélie Moreau stood beside him, cleared of all charges, finally free of the burden she had carried for a decade.
Thank you, she said simply.
For believing me when no one else would. Devereux watched as a man emerged from the prison, blinking in the sunlight, tears streaming down his face as his family ran to embrace him. Justice isn't about maintaining order, Devereux said. It's about finding the truth, no matter how painful that truth might be. As they walked away from the prison, Devereux thought about the cost. His career had survived, but barely. The trust in France's justice system would take years, maybe decades, to rebuild. But the alternative, living with a lie that destroyed innocent lives, that was a price no civilized society should ever pay. The case was closed. The conspiracy exposed. But Devereux knew that somewhere, in some other system, in some other country, similar abuses were happening. Justice required eternal vigilance. And he would be watching. If this story shook you to your core, you're not alone. The truth is always more terrifying than fiction. Subscribe so you never miss another investigation that exposes what's hiding in plain sight. Because the next story, the next conspiracy, the next fight for justice, it's already beginning. The gates of Père Lachaise cemetery stood open like the jaws of some ancient beast. Devereux arrived to find a dozen police vehicles already positioned along the perimeter, officers crouched behind doors, weapons drawn. The setting sun cast long shadows across the tombstones, turning the cemetery into a landscape of darkness and stone. Lieutenant Arnaud met him at the entrance, her face grim. She's at the Molière tomb, about 200 meters in. She's alone, unarmed as far as we can tell. She's been standing there for 20 minutes, not moving. Just waiting. Has she said anything? Only one thing. She'll only speak to the lead investigator on the Beaumont murders. She'll only speak to you. Devereux unbuttoned his jacket, revealing that he wore no vest, no weapon visible. I'm going in alone. Capitaine, that's not protocol. Nothing about this case has been protocol, Sophie. Stay here. If anything happens, you know what to do. He walked into the cemetery alone, his footsteps echoing on the cobblestone paths. The tombs of France's greatest artists, writers, and thinkers surrounded him, silent witnesses to whatever was about to unfold. He found Amélie Moreau exactly where Arnaud had said, standing before an ornate tomb, her dark hair moving slightly in the evening breeze. She was younger than he expected, no more than 27, with Elise's delicate features but harder edges, forged by a decade of grief and obsession. In her hands, she held a laptop and a thick manila folder. Capitaine Devereux, she said without turning. Thank you for coming alone. I wasn't sure you would. Amélie, we need to talk about what's been happening. For people are dead. 6 now, including the 2 found today. You were seen at one of the crime scenes. She finally turned to face him, and he saw tears streaming down her face. I was there, but not to kill him. I was there to save him. I was too late. Explain that to me. She held up the laptop. 10 years ago, my sister discovered something that got her killed. A conspiracy involving planted evidence, falsified forensic reports, and witness intimidation across dozens of criminal cases. It involved prosecutors, forensic experts, even judges. They were manufacturing convictions, sending innocent people to prison, all to maintain their conviction rates and advance their careers. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth, she said, her voice breaking. Elise found proof. She worked for Dubois's firm, the defense attorney. She discovered internal memos, payment records, communications showing how evidence was being manipulated. She was going to expose everything. So they killed her. And they framed Thomas, the perfect scapegoat. His conviction was just another manufactured case. Devereux felt his world tilting. If that's true, why didn't this evidence come out during the trial? Because it was destroyed. Or so they thought. Elise was smart. She backed everything up, encrypted it, and hid it where no one would think to look. It took me 9 years to find it. 9 years of searching through her belongings, her digital footprint, everything. I finally cracked her encryption 3 months ago. She opened the laptop, angling the screen toward him. Devereux saw files, hundreds of them. Emails, bank transfers, forensic reports with handwritten notes in the margins showing deliberate alterations. His hands shook as he scrolled through them. My God, he whispered. These cases, I recognize some of these. These people are all in prison. 18 innocent people are serving life sentences because of this conspiracy, Amélie said, including Thomas. And when I started contacting the people involved, trying to get them to confess, trying to get them to come forward, they started dying. Someone's silencing them. The architect of the whole operation. I don't know who it is. The mastermind always stayed anonymous, used code names in communications. But they're killing everyone who could expose them. Dubois, Fontaine, Leclerc, Dr. Marchant, they all knew pieces of the truth. And now they're dead. Devereux's mind raced through the implications. The 2 victims found today, what did they know? The prosecutor had been the one who actually falsified forensic evidence in multiple cases. The juror had been bribed to influence the verdict in Thomas's trial. I had arranged to meet them both, to get their confessions on record. But someone got to them first. You should have come to the police. Amélie laughed bitterly. The police? How do I know who's involved? This conspiracy reached the highest levels of the justice system. For all I know, police officers were part of it too. I trusted no one. I couldn't. But you're trusting me now. Because I'm out of options. And because in the last 24 hours, I've received 3 messages. Anonymous, untraceable. They said they're coming for me next. And they said they're going to finish what they started. They're going to kill Thomas in his cell and make it look like suicide. Tonight. Devereux pulled out his phone immediately. I'll get protection to Poissy right now. It won't matter, Amelie said. Don't you understand? They have access everywhere. Prison guards, police officers, prosecutors. The system is compromised. The only way to save Thomas, the only way to stop this, is to expose everything at once. So loud, so public, that they can't kill us all. She handed him the folder. Inside were printed copies of the most damaging evidence, organized chronologically, with clear documentation of the conspiracy's timeline and scope. I've already sent copies to 3 international news organizations and 2 human rights groups, she said. It goes public tomorrow at 9 a.m., regardless of what happens to me. But I needed to give this to law enforcement too, to someone who might actually care about the truth. Devereux stared at the evidence in his hands, feeling the weight of it, the implications. Careers would be destroyed. The justice system would be thrown into chaos. Dozens of cases would need to be reopened and reinvestigated. But innocent people would be freed. And the guilty would finally face consequences. There's one more thing, Amelie said quietly. I think I know who the architect is. There's one person connected to all these cases, someone with access to every level of the system, someone who's managed to stay completely invisible. Before she could say the name, Devereux's phone rang. It was Arnaud. Capitaine, we have a problem. There's been a breach at Poissy. Thomas Beaumont was just found in his cell, unresponsive. Medical team is with him now, but it doesn't look good.